So this was the first Labour government budget for 14 years, and there was an upfront declaration from the Chancellor of £40 billion worth of tax rises, and that was coupled with a wholesale rewriting of the government's fiscal rules. That's the rules by which they govern their spending. The only question, therefore, really became which taxes would go up and who would be paying them. Well, the single biggest tax rise was in respect of employers' national insurance. That will be increased in April from 13.8% to 15%. And the threshold, that is the point at which that national insurance is paid, is going to go down. So you'll be paying more national insurance and from a lower salary base as well. Interestingly, in 2021, when this sort of increase was trailed by the Tories, the OBR said that 80% of any such rise would be channelled into lower wages and 20% would be channelled into higher prices. So, however you dress this up, it is a tax on jobs. Moving on, none of us begrudge the lowest paid in our economy the eye-watering 16.3% increase in the national minimum wage for 18 to 20-year-olds and the 6.7% increase in the national living wage. But let's just pause for a moment, shall we? We've got an increase in employers' national insurance, and we've also got an increase in national living wage and the national minimum wage. I am very nervous how employers will react to this increased levy on employment. There is some protection for small firms from the employers' national insurance increase, but overall, this can't be good news. There was then some discussion about the new Workers' Rights Bill, which will increase the entitlement of employees to both paternity and maternity leave, and of course make it easier to bring unfair dismissal claims. So, we've got an increase in employers' NI, an increase in the national minimum wage, an increase in the national living wage, and increased rights for employees. How will the job market react to this? The answer is we don't really know, but I am nervous about how this will affect jobs in this country. So were there any other tax increases? Oh, you bet there were. Capital gains tax rates rising from 10 to 18%, 20 to 24%, 18 to 24%. So across the board, pretty much with capital gains tax. And those increases in rates are scheduled to raise £2.5 billion a year. But of course, capital gains tax is only actually paid when assets are sold. So whether the £2.5 billion actually penciled in will ever be raised depends upon people actually behaving in the way the Chancellor expects them to and selling assets. They don't have to do that. So whether that tax actually ever arises, we'll have to see. There was a well-trailed inheritance tax grab as well. At the moment, if you die and you leave a business or agricultural property to a beneficiary, they're exempt from inheritance tax in quite a lot of circumstances. Now, there will be a maximum relief of £1 million in respect of leaving those assets to beneficiaries under your will. So, picture the scene. You own a business which employs maybe 50, 60, 100, 150 people, and you die. The business is left to your beneficiaries, and let's say it's worth £6 million. If you deduct the £1 million allowance you're allowed, that means £5 million in terms of the value of that business is added to your estate. And you are going to be taxed on that at 20%. So that tax will be £1 million. So the new business owner or the beneficiaries or the estate of the person who's died are going to have to pay £1 million just to pass that business on to your beneficiaries. How are they going to fund that? I mean, ultimately, you've got to wonder whether in some circumstances that inheritance tax bill will be so huge that actually the only thing they'll have to do is shut the business, sell the assets, and of course, all those employees will lose their jobs. Who knows how this will pan out, but again, I'm not hopeful it's going to end well. Who else will be clobbered? Well, the non-dom regime is being abolished and replaced by a residence-based regime. That apparently is going to raise £12.7 billion a year. But of course, these non-doms are very internationally mobile. So again, there are assumptions around behaviour. Let's see how much tax it actually raises. Moving on to stamp duty land tax. Anyone who purchases additional residential properties, yes, additional residential properties, not just second homeowners, as the Chancellor said, will be affected by an increase in stamp duty land tax. At the moment, if you own more than one residential property, you pay a premium of 3% in terms of stamp duty land tax. That will increase to 5% from tomorrow. So, best crack on and get that property purchase completed. Any bright spots in what was frankly an hour and 20-minute long slog through her speech? Well, Pensioners will see their pensions go up from April by 4.1%. Alcohol duty on draft drinks in a pub, you'll get a penny a pint off. However, no pleasure without pain, because alcohol duty generally will go up by RPI from February 2025. There was talk of business rates reliefs, but we've been here before, and actually, what we'd all rather see is a reform of the regime. Fuel duty is frozen for 2025 as well, so that's good news. The corporation tax regime will remain unchanged, so the rates will stay at 25%, and the full expensing and annual investment allowance are also going to remain the same, as will the research and development regime, which is very valuable for those companies that are innovative. As regards the national insurance and income tax thresholds, well, they will be unfrozen from 2028, so that means they'll rise by inflation. So that's also some good news, but also that's in 3 years' time. And then, of course, there was the kicker: VAT on school fees from January 2025. Interesting to see what the effect on the school system is. And maybe that's why they're increasing education spending by 2.3 billion next year, to soak up the number of pupils dropping out of private school and going to their local comprehensive. Who knows? There were a welter of transport improvement announcements, green energy announcements, and of course our NHS is going to receive a £22.6 billion increase in its day-to-day spending budget. But I have a problem with that, because the quid pro quo is it's only got to increase its productivity by 2%. Given the hundreds of billions we plough into the NHS every year, that doesn't sound like very much to me. So, how am I left feeling? Nervous, uncertain. Ultimately, if you change the government's fiscal rules and raise taxes by £40 billion, it's easy to spray money around. What it's not easy to ensure is that we all, as taxpayers, receive efficient value for money services. For me, the jury is out, and it seems the OBR agree. As one thing Ms Reeves did not report is that the OBR have stated that 40 billion of tax rises will affect the long-term growth of this country. Watch this space.